Welcome, everyone. If you are that endlessly curious learner who is, always looking to dissect a perfectly crafted story, you are in the exact right place.
Oh, absolutely.
Because today we have a very specific mission for this deep dive. We are zooming in on just one highly concentrated, masterfully constructed scene from a much larger narrative.
Right. We are entirely bypassing the sprawling, years-long, epic stuff today. We're focusing on a total masterclass in tension that takes place over just a few minutes of real-time action. We are unpacking the source material known as Session 8, Vorak's View.
Yeah, and let's unpack the setup first because it is driven by such a brilliant narrative choice. Instead of following the grand actions of, well, a party of heroes from some omniscient perspective, this story is strictly told through the first-person perspective of an NPC.
A non-player character, yeah.
Exactly. We are seeing the world strictly through the eyes of Vorak Tidechain. He's the bosun of a vessel called the Dauntless. And the scene opens right in the absolute middle of a heist. I mean, the ship is actively being stolen.
It's such a great use of the limited narrator trope. Because shifting the perspective to an outsider who is just caught in the middle of all this chaos, it forces us to look at things practically.
Completely practically.
Vorak doesn't know these people at all. He doesn't know their tragic backstories. He doesn't care about their grand quests. He only has the information presented to him in those 60 seconds between life and death.
Yeah.
And it forces the audience to evaluate the characters purely on their actions under extreme duress.
Which is exactly why this matters so much to you, the listener. It brings up a really compelling real-world question, I think. How quickly can you assess the competence of strangers when absolutely everything around you is falling apart?
Oh, that's the ultimate test, isn't it?
Right. If you were thrust into a crisis, could you look at a room full of strangers and instantly determine who is going to panic and who is actually going to get you out alive? That is the survival skill Vorak is demonstrating here. It is an absolute clinic on reading people under pressure.
And the pressure in this scenario is incredibly literal. To really understand Vorak's assessment, we first have to, understand his environment. We start in the dark.
Pitch black.
Yeah, Vorak is locked inside the cramped, iron-barred brig of the Dauntless, and the ship is just screaming around him.
The sensory details the author uses here are frankly suffocating. The ship isn't just creaking like a normal wooden boat on the water. Iron is straining against bolts. The rigging cables are singing these high-pitched, awful notes because they are under way too much tension.
It's visceral.
It really is. And underneath all of that structural noise is this low, terrifying hum vibrating right through the floorboards.
That hum is, well, it's the most dangerous element in the room. The Dauntless is not your standard sailing galleon. It is powered by live necrotic cores located deep in the ship's belly.
Which is such a wild concept.
Right. For anyone unfamiliar with that, think of a necrotic core as a magical nuclear reactor. But instead of splitting atoms, it runs on concentrated death energy.
Yeah, totally safe, right?
Oh, totally. It sounds like something massive that should be sleeping.
Yeah.
But it's been forced to work instead.
Yeah.
It is essentially the audio equivalent of a catastrophe just waiting to happen.
And sitting in the dark, listening to this magical time bomb, is Vorak Tidechain. Our sources tell us he is a pragmatic, incredibly weather-beaten green dragonborn.
Which means he's a humanoid with draconic features.
Exactly. Scales, a snout, a breath weapon, the whole deal. He's a former prison guard. He's got these thick rope scars crisscrossing his palms from decades of really hard naval work. And the way he handles the stress of this sensory nightmare is fascinating to me. He counts out loud and constantly.
The text gives us this very direct window into his mental state. He says, quote, 17 crates, 4 damaged, 13 secure. End quote. He is literally categorizing his environment using integers.
It feels like much more than just a quirky character trait, though. It reads like a psychological grounding technique.
Yeah. It absolutely is a grounding technique. Vorak is a guy who has lived through severe trauma. He mentions surviving the bad old days of running fuel corridors. When you look at how people in the real world deal with chaotic, life-threatening situations.
Like emergency responders or trauma surgeons.
Exactly. They often find one highly specific, controllable element to focus on just to stave off panic. For Vorak, when the ship is screaming and the necrotic reactor is threatening to melt down, the only thing he can actually control is the math.
So he counts the crates.
He counts crates, he counts crew. He imposes order on a totally uncontrollable environment through numbers.
And that brings us to the inciting incident. Vorak is sitting in the brig, counting to keep his sanity, when the ship rolls violently to starboard. A magical storm has just hit. And then, over the noise of the straining iron and the reactor, he hears footsteps approaching his cell in the narrow passage.
6 strangers enter this poorly lit, super cramped space right outside his cell. And Vorak, acting as the cynical, pragmatic survivor he is, instantly runs a clinical threat assessment on the group.
And we are going to slow down and walk through this lineup because Vorak's evaluation is just incredibly sharp. This is where the concept of real-world threat assessment beautifully merges with the narrative.
Yeah, he doesn't see a band of noble heroes coming to rescue him.
Not at all. He sees a crew of heavily armed strangers attempting to steal a ship with 0 time on the clock. So first up, he evaluates Gobbo.
Gobbo is a goblin artificer. An artificer is essentially a magical engineer, right? An inventor, someone who blends magic with mechanics. But Vorak doesn't care about Gobbo's magical capabilities at all.
No, Vorak looks straight at the goblin's hands. He sees grease packed deeply under the fingernails and these old burn scars across the knuckles. Vorak immediately identifies them as Rigger's hands.
That specific phrase, Rigger's hands, carries so much weight to a bosun like Vorak. It's like looking at a mechanic's calluses in the real world. You know immediately that this person works for a living.
And that they know how machines operate.
Exactly. What it tells Vorak is that Gobbo knows how things break. And more importantly, how to break them on purpose. Gobbo doesn't hesitate or look around the room. He goes straight for the keys on the pegboard. He is the bypass. Vorak understands in literally seconds that this goblin is the key to removing physical barriers.
It's so efficient. Next, Vorak looks at Bones. Bones is a wood elf monk. In this context, a monk isn't, a cloistered friar. It's a disciplined martial artist who fights without armor or traditional weapons. And the text describes Bones as lean, barefoot, and taking up the doorway without actually filling it.
Vorak assesses his tactical positioning instantly. He notes that Bones is watching the back door. Bones has his weight distributed on the balls of his feet. He is the rear guard.
Right.
What is really notable here is the economy of attention. Bones isn't watching Gobbo pick the lock. He isn't looking at the prisoner in the cell. He's focused entirely on the unseen threat behind them. Vorak recognizes the sheer military discipline required to guard a flank while a breakout is happening right behind you.
It shows an incredibly high level of trust within their team. They aren't micromanaging each other. Then we move to 3 Softpaw.
The rogue?
Yeah, 3 Softpaw is a tabaxi rogue. A tabaxi is a feline humanoid, and a rogue is generally your specialist in stealth and infiltration. He slips past the cell, barely casting a shadow in the passage, but Vorak focuses on a very specific physical tell. The tabaxi's tail is flicking.
Now, many people might read a flicking tail or a nervous tick as a sign of impending panic, but Vorak categorizes it entirely differently. He reads it as nervous but professional.
Oh, I love that distinction.
It is the physiological response of adrenaline. It is very similar to, say, a surgeon's elevated heart rate right before a really complex procedure. 3 Softpaw knows the stakes are life and death, but the nervous energy is channeled directly into the job, not into fear.
That makes so much sense. Then, the physical wall of the group steps forward. Balbarum. He is an obsidian dragonborn paladin. Now, a paladin is a holy warrior, usually bound by a strict oath or moral code. Balbarum is massive, wearing battered plate armor, carrying a shield and this faintly glowing holy symbol, and he simply stares Vorak down.
The unspoken communication in that moment is so heavy. Balbarum doesn't utter a single word to the prisoner. He physically plants himself between the cell and the rest of his crew, establishing a hard perimeter.
Yeah.
Vorak's internal monologue notes the intention clearly. I see you. Don't move.
Also, wearing heavy plate armor on a ship is an insane drowning risk.
Oh, massive risk.
It shows absolute commitment to his role. Vorak respects the presence of a moral and physical barrier. He notes to himself that they can't just steal a ship, they have to righteously steal a ship.
It establishes the rules of engagement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Balbarum is telling Vorak that there's a line he cannot cross, period.
Then we have Jay. Jay presents a completely different psychological profile. He is a human gambler. He's wearing a coat that seems entirely too nice for wet, bloody ship stealing, and he has cards tucked into his sleeve.
But it's his behavior that really catches Vorak's attention. Jay has his back to the cell, looking up the ladder, and he is loudly counting down the seconds until the heavily armed Golden Lion guards arrive. 60 seconds. 45. 40. He is acting as the literal ticking clock of the scene.
And this is where Vorak's own psychology mirrors the party perfectly. Vorak uses counting to manage stress, so he watches Jay count down their impending doom, but notes his gambler's flatness.
Right, the detachment.
Yeah, Jay is delivering this terrible high-stakes timeline with the emotional detachment of an air traffic controller.
Emotional detachment in a crisis is a massive indicator of competence. When the person holding the stopwatch isn't freaking out, it signals to everyone else that the situation, while dire, is still within acceptable parameters.
It keeps the panic at bay.
Exactly. Finally, Vorak evaluates Orthez. Orthez is a leonin paladin, so a large lion-like humanoid. He has tawny fur, old campaign braids, and is chewing on an iron jaw. Like several of the others, he isn't looking at the prisoner. He is efficiently stripping the weapon racks and sorting the stolen gear.
He's acting with the ruthless efficiency of a quartermaster who has done this in the dark dozens of times. Vorak's final read on Orthez is, I think, the most telling of the entire group. He says, quote, "Moves like an officer, thinks like one too. That's the dangerous kind."
The distinction between a fighter and an officer is so critical in threat assessment. A fighter just reacts to the immediate threat in front of him. A tactical officer looks at the entire board and is willing to make really hard sacrifices to win the overall engagement.
Vorak doesn't see a chaotic band of adventurers at all.
No, he sees a highly functional tactical unit. He sees the mechanic, the shield, the adrenaline, the perimeter, the clock, and the commander. All in under a minute.
And as the 60 seconds tick down to 0, the lock finally clicks open. We transition into what, normally would be a negotiation. But the dialogue here is shockingly minimalist. There is no grand speech to rally the prisoner.
None. Orthez just turns to Vorak and asks a simple, purely functional question. Vorak, can you sail her?
Vorak replies with equal bluntness. I can sail her. Where?
Orthez says, out. And the goblin, Gabo, chimes in really dryly. Out's a start.
The brevity of that exchange perfectly encapsulates their shared desperation. They don't have a grand multi-step escape plan. Their entire strategy is basically directional move away from the people actively trying to kill them.
Because Jay's countdown is hitting single digits in the background. The Golden Lions are swarming the docks. They are out of time.
Which leads to the most crucial moment of the scene, I think, where leadership and trust are established without a single word of exposition. Orthez reaches into the stripped weapon rack and he hands Vorak a boat hook.
Handing him a boat hook instead of, say, a sword or a dagger, that is a very specific, deliberate choice. It feels like an unspoken contract between the two of them.
It's the ultimate symbol of delegation. A boat hook is a long pole used by sailors to push away from docks or catch heavy lines. It is a tool of utility. It is not a weapon of war.
Right. By handing Vorak that specific item, Orthez is setting the terms of their arrangement instantly. He's basically saying, I don't need another soldier to fight the guards. I need a specialist. I need you to do the jobs you are uniquely qualified to do.
And Orthez makes the command explicit. He says, we're going up, you're going forward. Get us out of harbor before they bring guns around. Vorak takes the steel, tests its weight, and accepts the role.
It highlights such a core tenet of effective leadership in high-stress environments. Orthez trusts a complete stranger with the survival of his entire crew simply because he recognizes Vorak's domain expertise. And Vorak respects the pragmatic, unhesitating nature of that command.
So the moment that contract is forged, they rush the deck, and when they emerge from the cramped, vibrating brig into the open air, the sensory details completely shift again. It is an explosion of severe weather. Rain is just slamming down.
The sky is this unnatural black-green color.
Yeah, with lightning spiraling inward as a result of the magical storm clashing with the necrotic energy of the ship. They are completely exposed. The harbor wall is falling away behind them, and you can see the orange sparks of the Golden Lion rifles firing from the docks.
And just to add a final layer of chaos to the whole boarding process, a water genasi woman, so a humanoid with elemental water ancestry, she hauls herself out of the freezing ocean and over the railing, joining the crew just as they breach the storm.
In the middle of this absolute maelstrom, Vorak and Orthez share this incredible quiet dynamic at the helm. Vorak looks out at the magical storm tearing the sky apart, turns to the leonin, and states the obvious, this bad.
To which Orthez simply replies, good.
That response is so counterintuitive. Why is shared pessimism, or at least a shared acknowledgement of a terrible reality, comforting to someone like Vorak?
Because Vorak is a professional cynic.
Yeah.
If Orthez had tried to offer blind optimism, if he had patted him on the back and said, don't worry, we've got this, Vorak would have instantly lost faith in him.
It would have felt fake.
Worse than fake, optimism in that specific environment would be a symptom of delusion. I mean, look at their situation. They are in a damaged, stolen vessel powered by a volatile magical reactor, sailing into an apocalyptic storm while being actively fired upon by a military force.
Acknowledging the danger proves you actually understand it.
Exactly. Orthez saying good is an embrace of the awful reality. He is acknowledging that the storm is deadly, yes, but it is precisely the kind of deadly cover they need to escape the military superpower right behind them. Vorak realizes that this crew understands the margins of their own survival. They are pragmatic, calculating risk takers.
So they have to set a course. They are punching out of the harbor and into the magical anomaly known as the necrotic corridor. The lights of the city of Tahala are fading behind them. Orthez hands Vorak a compass. But this compass does not point north, it points to a very specific set of coordinates. Orthez gives the final destination, Site T28.
And the narrative makes it very clear that Vorak knows exactly what T28 is. It is a massive, horrific fuel processing station located deep in the corridor. It is a place of extraction and danger.
Not a safe haven.
Far from it. For a man who just spent time locked in a brig, willingly steering a ship toward an industrial processing station is highly irrational.
Yet he commits to it anyway. He looks at the compass, looks at the soaking wet, highly disciplined crew standing on the deck of the screaming ship and says, right, T28 it is.
He makes the choice because the people beside him have proven their competence. The destination is terrible, but the vehicle, both the ship and the team, is sound.
It really makes you reflect on the nature of teamwork in our own lives, doesn't it? Have you ever agreed to take on an incredibly daunting task? Maybe a nearly impossible project at work, a massive career shift, or a high-risk venture simply because the team standing next to you inspired absolute confidence.
When you look to your left and right and see people who are fully capable of handling their responsibilities, sailing into the dark suddenly feels manageable.
Vorak didn't need to be rescued by flawless, shining heroes. He needed a team that wouldn't break under pressure. And his 60-second assessment proved that they wouldn't. The narrative efficiency of Session 8 is truly remarkable. In a span of just a few minutes, we learn the tactical makeup, the psychological state, and the hierarchy of this entire crew.
And we don't get this information through heavy exposition or campfire monologues. We get it through the sharp, counting eyes of a cynical outsider who is evaluating them purely as assets.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling final thought to ponder.
Yeah, Vorak managed to perfectly deconstruct this group of adventurers in just 1 minute. He identified the mechanic, the rear guard, the moral wall, the ticking clock, and the tactical commander.
Yeah.
He read their physical tells and their operational discipline flawlessly.
But as they sail deeper into the necrotic corridor toward the dangers of T28, you have to wonder. Building on that, the crew evaluated Vorak purely on his ability to sail the ship. They needed a bosun, and he fit the bill.
Right. So exactly how long will it take for this highly observant party to realize that the prisoner they just freed is far more than a simple deckhand? A man who can dissect a tactical squad in 60 seconds while managing his own trauma by counting the crates in a dark room is obviously hiding a wealth of experience.
The observer is often the one with the deepest secrets.
They brought a sailor aboard, but they may have also brought a profound mystery into their ranks.
We will have to leave that mystery for you to consider. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the tension, the unspoken contracts, and the survival tactics aboard the Dauntless. Keep an eye on the subtle details in the stories you consume, because you never know who is quietly counting the seconds in the dark. We'll see you on the next deep dive.